Welcome back to RelaxRV. Welcome back to RelaxRV. Hi, my name is Paul. I'm doing a podcast on stress while RVing. And I know none of you have ever experienced anything stressful while RVing. Well, perhaps a little bit. Now, stress means different things to different people, and what stresses one person out may just make another person laugh. And for that, I'm jealous. So let's talk about stress and RVing. Welcome back, folks. Paul Sebastian, registered nurse, retired RVer, sitting here in Virginia. This is Season 2, Episode 78, recorded and hopefully released on May 20th, 2022. How are you? So you can, I'm sure, hear the allergies effect on my voice. We've been hit hard. It seems like we're just traveling in the peak bloom spring season. As we travel north, it just keeps following us, or we're following it, I guess. So, sorry about that. So we visited Bardstown, and we hit the 1792 Distillery. And they were the only distillery that offered a free tour. We had been to a few, and to do a tour, they charge anywhere from $10 to $40. So we didn't want to do any of those. So we had parked in Bardstown. We walked around 20 minutes or so to get to the 1792 Distillery. They gave a great 45-minute tour. Then they provided 4 samples and a piece of bourbon chocolate. So interesting. Their tour was done with humor and a lot of education. We ended up buying a few of their bottles and some of their bourbon chocolates. We then learned that they're ending their tours and their gift shop will be closing in June of 2022. So, that doesn't give you a lot of time to get there if you are going to go there. So then we walked back to Bardstown, and we had Kentucky Fried Chicken for the first time, and not KFC brand of chicken, but real Kentucky Fried Chicken. We figured while we're here in Kentucky, we would have some. And it was really good, really delicious, moist. Really liked it. Great cornbread came with it too. We ate at Mammy's in town. We then checked a bunch of bars and looking for some live music that evening. We were hoping for Appalachian music, bluegrass. We were on the Bluegrass Highway. Nothing. No place in town. 2 places had bands. One was starting at 10 o'clock at night, which is our bedtime. Ha ha ha. And the other one was starting at, I think, 5, but they were just a cover band playing, rock and pop and stuff like that. So we gave up, and we pulled up if there was any wineries in the area, and we found McIntyre's Winery. Excuse me, that's my allergies. So we took a ride over there, and they offered corn cob wine. Now, one thing, I've mentioned this in the past on previous episodes, not sure if you listened to them or not, but we have a couple of friends that don't like going to wineries because they give you a tasting or a sampling, and it's typically 4 or 5 wines of their choosing. And it's typically the cost of a glass of wine, so they choose not to go to wineries. What we found is when we go and they offer us a tasting, we say no thank you, we're interested in purchasing either a couple of glasses or a bottle. Can we try this and that? And most wineries, actually we've never been turned down from doing that. They'll give us anywhere from, one to, I don't know, 5 or 6 different samples. And then we end up buying a couple glasses or a bottle. So one of their wines that they had listed, they offered to do a tasting, and I said no, but I'd like to try your corn cob wine. And they said, well, this is made from corn cobs, which we put in the barrels, and da-da-da-da. So it was delicious. I had never heard of it, but I really liked it. Trish didn't like it, so I got a glass of that. She got a glass of their Chardonnay, and we sat outside and enjoyed them. If we agree on a wine that we both like, then we'll get the bottle. You figure a glass of wine, $6, a bottle of wine, $15. For $3 extra, you get half a bottle of wine. That's the way we look at it. The next morning, we drove for about an hour heading to our next stop. Excuse me. And we stopped. We dropped off the rig, unhooked, and took the Jeep over to the Shaker Village of Pleasant Hill, Kentucky. And we figured half hour and that'll be enough, and then we'll leave. Unbelievable. We were there 3 hours. They offered a free tour, which we took. We learned about the history of Shakers, the derogatory name of Shaker that they have and then finally embraced, and where the handful of Shakers that are left in the USA, where they're located. Very, very interesting. We learned about their architecture. We learned about their way of life. We ended up going to their meeting hall or their church, where they described their masses going anywhere from 20 minutes because a fire broke out and cut it short, up to, I think it was like 22 hours long. Unbelievable. So, I'll put a link in the show notes to their, to their website, and if you're ever in the area, check them out. And I'll guarantee you this, we will be back. So on our Google Maps, if we hear of a place we want to see, and I've explained this before, and I have a video on my YouTube channel on how we plan our trips, check it out. It's RelaxRV Podcast on YouTube. I'll put a link in the show notes. So right now we have over 2,000 gold stars all over the world, but I would say 99.999% of them are in the U.S. And it's places that we want to go see. When we've come to one of these places, if we like it, we change that star to a visited, so we know we've been there. Because who knows, 3 years from now, our memories, And if we fall in love with a place like we did the Shaker Village, we change it to a heart, knowing we wouldn't mind going back in the future. So, We then went over to the Wildside Winery, which is a Harvest Host location. We sampled a couple of their wines and we bought a couple of bottles. Now we are about 60 miles from Churchill Downs at this time in the podcast, which is where the Kentucky Derby was being held, and it happened to be that weekend. We went online to look at tickets to go see it. Figure we're not really into horse racing, but when in Rome, right? So we went online, and like the cheapest tickets were like $90 a ticket, and you had to watch it on a screen, the race. You couldn't even see the track. So we said, nah. So we sat in the winery, had a glass of wine, and we watched the race on their TV. Pretty cool. The next day, we drove over to Callie's campground in Red River Gorge. We checked in. Callie is Callies, campground in Red River Gorge. We checked in, got set up, and headed over to the Natural Bridge State Resort Park in Kentucky. This park is a part of the Red River Gorge geological area, and it's in the Daniel Boone National Forest, and it's part of the Cumberland Ranger District. So when Googling information on this park, it was a little difficult to weed through all that nomenclature. Excuse me. So we found a map. It wasn't a very good map, but we found one. And we hiked the Natural Bridge Trail, which is about a half a mile, but went straight up in 500 feet elevation to a really impressive arch. We hiked up to the arch, then we hiked on top of the arch, and then we hiked, while up there, we hiked for a few more miles to other viewpoints overlooking the Daniel Boone National Forest and the Red River Gorge. We hiked like 4 miles, and after driving to the park, getting set up and all that, that was perfect. A few people had told us that while there we have to eat at Miguel's Pizza. So, if we hear of a place and a few people mention it to us, we make it a point to check it out. Now, so we went to Miguel's, and it's a really interesting place. They have some indoor seating, a dining room, very rustic, very not fancy at all. They have a room with, I guess, like 6 registers where you can place your order. Then they give you a number, and when your food is ready, they just walk around screaming your number and your name. We sat outside, and I don't know, there had to be seating for a couple hundred people outside with all the picnic tables and all. They had a basketball court on gravel that kids were playing basketball, adults were playing basketball, playing frisbee. It's, wow, a guy in the next campsite was backing out of his campsite and just backed into a tree with his silver Ford pickup truck. He dented his bumper and just drove off. Oof. Ah, the joys of RVing, huh, folks? So I'm sitting here in Virginia. I'm sitting outside the RV. The temps are somewhere around, let me see here, 89 degrees. But in the shade here, it actually feels like it's about 70 or 75. It's really interesting, the weather. Well, I guess about 75 or 80, but certainly not 90. So going back to Miguel's, it was